And we are live.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to our happy hour interview series today. Before we get started, just one housekeeping item. Our call for Reed Quintet miniatures is almost over. We're really thrilled with the amount and quality of the submissions we've received so far, so thanks to everyone who has submitted. But if you are writing a piece and want to submit, there is still just a little bit of time left. Go to civitasolisquintet.com and you can submit your piece, and you can also see all of our guidelines to make sure everything's a-okay with that. Our guest today is a personal friend of mine, as well as a few others of ours, Luke Ellard. He is a composer and clarinetist. Thanks for joining us, Luke.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. For those who don't know Luke, he's a fantastic composer and fantastic clarinetist. He was the winner of our second annual composition competition with his Reed Quintet, Sorry I Have to Run. For those who are listening who might be in a Reed Quintet or are about to start one, go ahead and check out his piece, and as well as some of his other pieces for your own instruments at lukeellard.com. Let's get started just with a little bit of background information about you, Luke. So what first got you interested in music? And how did that lead to your multifaceted career as both a performer and composer?
So if we're talking like way back when, the reason I joined band was because my best friend at the time in sixth grade wouldn't do art with me. So he wanted to play clarinet, and I was like, oh, fine, whatever, I guess I'll be a band geek. And then I ended up, this happened. So somewhere along the way, things worked out. But I think what really, when it became like a real thing to me was when we got internet in middle school, because I'm of that age. And I started just finding random radio stations online, and I was just like, it was everything from like medieval music to goth music, techno, like everything. And I was just, little baby mind blown. And I just started kind of mixing, like trying to play that stuff on my clarinet and improvising, and it transferred over to a tiny little keyboard where I would make up little songs, which then transferred to writing it down. And so yeah, really early, that's kind of how I got into music, and then it just has spiraled out of control since.
What was your earliest composition?
Oh God. So the keyboard was like this big, and it had preset beats that you could set, like techno, jazz, whatever. And I played this one song. The melody was like, I would put it on the techno beat, which was basically like Boots and Cats, and, and it was like da 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 da. Like that was it. And I would just do that over and over and over again. And I shared a room with my twin brother, and he would just be like, no. But that was my very first thing that I was just like, Mom, listen to this.
That's awesome. I think we all have similar stories with starting instruments. I know for me, I always wanted to do choir because I loved choir. My friends were doing it. And my mom was like, I played clarinet. You're going to be in band. And I was like, no, but I love it now. So.
My God, that's a lot of fun. So do you have any tips for anyone who's interested in pursuing a career in both composition and performance? Or do you have anything that you wish you knew, like kind of before you got started, maybe when you were in like your undergrad, your master's?
I sure do. I could answer this with like the super boring, like time management skills and that kind of thing. But I think the best advice I ever got early on was work with those around you and don't be a jerk. That was like, that's really it. Your friends
Good advice.
Yeah, your friend, but if you think about it, like your friends are your support system and your biggest allies, especially if you're in music school. And it's a rare like pressure cooker environment, even at smaller schools, that you can build each other up and learn from each other. And I feel like that can feed into both performing and composing. I think for composition, the way that I view it is I really believe that everyone's a composer in their own way, whether that's just like writing a symphony or producing a pop song, or even if you're listening to a song in the car and you think, oh, I wish the chorus did something different than that. Like even in that moment, you're composing in your own way. And so I think I wish that was something that I realized when I was younger, because I had this idea that composers had to be these monolithic figures, these like, almost a hermit where it's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for the art, like that kind of thing. And I think it would just cause a lot of anxiety because that's not my personality. And I think many other composers feel that way too. And so we get caught up in the whole. I remember the first festival I went to in undergrad, I like in my introduction, I was like, well, most of my music is tonal, but I promise I'm not going to write tonal music forever. Because I thought, like, oh, to be legitimate, you have to write atonal music. And I was just like, so I wish I had the viewpoint I had now back then.
How do you like, because I mean, from our time at IU, we've had like some little discussions about this, but how did you like balance your time between composing and then, practicing clarinet and staying up with that as well?
I feel like I have often described it as a 50-50 relationship, but when I really think about it, that's absolutely not true. It balancing it depends on what has to be done, pretty much. Because we're all having to multitask stuff all the time, even if it's just like running to get your oil changed. Like we have to prioritize things. And so for me, balancing is determining, okay, what is the thing that should be in priority right now? Do I have a performance that I need to practice for coming up? Do I have a deadline for a commission coming up or something like that? And then figuring out ways that I can adjust my life in a general way that can help aid in those getting done. I love lists and schedules and things, but I feel like the more that I've operated on a broader basis, a more like self grace giving basis in balancing things has helped me be happier juggling both. So I think really it's just figuring out what is most important, like what fires do you need to put out right now, and then how can I kind of put everything in line to knock them all.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of balancing as a composer and a clarinetist, that sort of gives you a unique perspective to both angles. So do you think that that's helped you develop your career and gain insight on one or the other? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. In terms of like trademark symbol classical music, I feel like being in both sides, I feel like I can empathize with, and we really separate it too. And I always have to correct myself in saying like both sides, like composer and performer, because academia has set it up that way. Like at IU, I could have gone my entire time and never talked to a composer ever if I didn't want to. And then many universities it's like that. But I feel like I'm able to empathize, which again, I think I always try to relate it back to communication and community. Um, and so it helps me expand my friend group and people that I collaborate with and my advocates for me and me being an advocate for them. I think that's one of the biggest ways that it's helped my perspective. Um, and of course, it's opened up tons of doors. I think when I think every single piece that I've done, I'm connected to the people in some kind of way. Like even with you guys, like Amy and Laura, and like you guys knowing you and then kind of seeing what you do and having the friendship, it was like, oh yeah, of course I want to write something for them. And then it working out is really awesome. But yeah, I think the personal relationships that form through that are the things that are really made the biggest impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the great things about new music, like in general, is like getting to know the composer and getting their insight. If you have time and you're in the same vicinity or are able to Skype or Zoom to be able to perform for them and get their, input on their piece. And that's what makes that so different from some older styles of music where that's not possible anymore. So we've heard really, really exciting things about your project LE. Could you just tell us like everything about it for people who don't know?
I would love to. So ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to make electronic pop music. From like that very first kind of composition I made through when I got a bigger keyboard that had different ways to make beats and stuff, it just has kind of evolved. But again, it's this idea that, okay, I have to be a certain way as a classical musician. I have to be a certain way as a composer. And that's something that I really wrestled with, even when I was in grad school for composition at UT Austin, when everyone there was like producing electronic music and doing like super hipster stuff. I think it was just something that I struggled with. And it really wasn't until probably I started my doctorate that I felt like I was free to pursue music in a way that I wanted to. And one of those ways was really diving into creating electronic music that was really pop oriented and experimenting and finding a way, how can I combine my life as a composer, a clarinetist, and then as a junkie for pop and electronic music. And that's really what became of this. So Ellie is my producer name. I've done producing for other people as well. And it's something that I really am interested in doing, and working with remixing classical pieces for other people. Like I've had composers come up to me and want me to remix in a way their own solos and stuff. And so it's something that I really think is cool. And one of my biggest projects is my album coming out later this year called Emigrate. And my first single off of that album, the title track, came out June 1st. And it's on Bandcamp and Spotify. If you're like interested in hashtag sad boy electronic music. But it's the inspiration for this album is it's vignettes of the past 10 years with relationships and dating and just ways that I've tried to connect with other people, some good and some bad. And the title Emigrate with an E comes from this image that I've had in my head for a really long time, where I feel like there's this like chasm between myself, my various wants. It could be, well, I want to really pursue my career, and a part of that, it's really hard to have a relationship. And then the other side is like this, it's, you know, attractive to like this idea of settling down and finding somebody to be with. But to make that move is almost like I'm crossing an ocean and leaving my home and leaving myself behind in a way. And so that's where the inspiration for the title comes from. And so I have tracks. My track Banger is about being in a club. I had just gotten dumped and it really sucked. And so I started going out to clubs all the time. I already went out dancing a lot, but I would go out to clubs with friends and maybe drink a little bit too much. And it's the image of like this cacophony, and I'm trying to get people to come on and feature and like improvise over it. It's very like dubsteppy EDM. I have a couple other tracks that are more like down tempo, and the song that's released right now is more of kind of ambient and really showing you where I'm at. I'm kind of giving you the last chapter of the book before I show you the rest of it. So that's the whole project, and I have another single coming out in a couple months. Super stoked about that. So stay tuned.
That sounds like a really innovative project and really exciting. In terms of composing, is there somebody who inspires you, and could you share some of the works that you love?
I would love to. I'm inspired by all kinds of music, videography, photography, social issues, and just personal experiences. And my influences, I feel like, change a lot day to day, almost sometimes. But some people that I've looked up to for a really long time, one is flutist, composer, like style icon, Natalie Joachim. Amazing. I love her album Femme d'T, and I've been really lucky to work with her several times, and she's incredible. Been in her group, her duo Flutronics. I feel like she really has been an inspiration in finding this middle ground between composer, performer, new music, electronic, like just being really authentically yourself. And I think she does that in such a way that can be empowering for us. As far as others, really just friends and people that are around me that really inspire me. Saxophonist composer Nick Zulik is amazing. I love his work in general, and the way that he does video and just everything has really inspired me. Piano duo Hockett, they're incredible, both amazing performers and composers as well. Sax quartet Noise, I love them. Composer collective Kinds of Kings. One of my favorite pieces to perform is called Hands by Cassie Wieland. It's a clarinet solo, amazing. Yaz Lancaster, they are an amazing composer and violinist. They just dropped a new like EP on Bandcamp like today, which is cool. Other than that, for pieces of music, I've been obsessed with Chloe and Halle's latest album, Ungodly Hour. Amazing, like progressive EDM kind of music, not EDM, R&B with like maybe some EDM stuff thrown in. Charlie XCX's mixtape, How I'm Feeling Now, that came out earlier this year. If we're talking classical music, one of my favorite pieces is Nico Muhly's Viola Concerto, Thomas Ades's Violin Concerto, and anything by Jennifer Higdon. Yeah, that was really long-winded. Sorry about that.
I absolutely love so many of those artists. You just said, like, you kept saying them, and I was like, yes, yes. One thing I do love, though, that it sounds like you're trying to do, and that a lot of those artists do, is that even though it's classical music, it's not like, it's very appealing to non-classical musicians because it has elements, like you said, of like dubstep or dance or electronics or video, you know. And I feel like that's something the general public who aren't classical musicians can really, you know, hold on to and attract them to our world, our ever-changing world. I'd love to hear more about your collective, New Atmospheres, and how you guys came to be and your mission and goals as an ensemble.
Yeah, it really started out as a friendship with this amazing composer, Louise Krasinski. We both went to UNT together, and we just in the Dallas area, there are some groups that do some new music stuff, but DFW is so enormously spread out that the sense of community for new music isn't as really solidified. And there's so many people, it's a major metropolitan area, that it's kind of like, why don't we have that? And so that was the catalyst. That question was, what can we do here as creators to help bolster up some kind of a community with others, and I guess like help terraform like a community here for new music. And it really formed organically through almost every single person in the group. We performed with each other in the new music ensemble at UNT, so we all had worked together a lot, and it was really just like, I love performing with you, let's do something. And it's at this point, it's pretty loose. Of course, Miss Rona decided to kind of uproot a lot of our plans, but that's fine. We're, you know, very flexible. But yeah, it's kind of this very fluid idea of with a mission to work with and perform music by North Texas composers and work with artists here of varying medium and background.
Yeah, Miss Rona did seem to screw up several things, didn't she? Going back to inspiration real fast, I wanted to ask you about your piece, Sorry I Have to Run, that you wrote before I was in the quintet. And I just wondered where the inspiration for that piece came from, like the Morse code section.
We may have lost Bridget a little bit.
That's fine. Yeah. So that was inspired by anxiety. So being in music school and just being kind of in this insular world, I think we can all agree that there, even no matter how like friendly and supportive the environment is, there is this kind of underlying bubbling of trying to catch up and feeling behind and feeling like, oh, well, I'm not good enough, or imposter syndrome is kind of overtaking our decisions. And so much of this kind of anxiety permeates a lot of what we do. And a lot of times it's not healthy, period. But some people kind of thrive in that. And I think that's also kind of a red flag. But it was inspired by how, like, for me, trying to do so many things, it's like you see someone and you're walking past and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you, but sorry, I have to run. And then you just literally sprint away. Like that's where the title comes from. And so it's the music representation of that, where, you know, on the outside, we're like unflappable and we're like, yeah, I can handle everything. We're so good. Like I had this performance, and it's really great. But underneath, you're just like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And I sound like shit. So that's like the piece. And then as far as the Morse code section, that's like, if you ever sit in a commons area, all you hear is tap, 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 tap. Computers, phone. You hear like percussion in the background. And so it's really that kind of tapping noises ingraining in you that you're just like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this one thing. I have to go, I have to send this email. And so it's literally like the tapping of fingers and trying to catch up with work.
I love that. We love the Morse code sections. We love just like experimenting with it to see how we can do it and how fast some people can play while others do slower, what rhythms we can do. And I love the beginning, like all the little motives just like passing each other by. I think that does such a great job of conveying your point.
Thank you. I had an idea, like my idea with the beginning was I wanted to create something that it was as if you just opened up the door and the piece was already happening, and then you just open it up and then you're catching it right at that moment. And it's kind of like when you open up like the door to like a school of music or something, and it's suddenly just like cacophony hitting you. That was the image I had in my mind.
It's so fun to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun. Yeah, like the audience. I was actually playing, I think I was playing a recording for my mom, just like going back and listening to our most recent recording. She's like, I love that. Keep it going.
Mom compliments are like literally the best.
I know.
Kind of along the same vein, what do you think that performers and chamber groups should know when working with living composers, especially if it's like a new relationship, with a composer that they might not have worked with before? Are there like any resources out there that you feel like might help some people in a chamber music setting who are seeking to do some sort of commission?
Yeah, the difficult thing with resources is that they often assume a certain level of financial backing or a certain level of means. For instance, New Music USA, like the bare minimum commission fee, I believe is still $2,000, even if it's like a solo under 10 minutes, which not many people can do. And I think a lot of that, and I understand the reasoning and the math behind it, but I think the biggest thing that I always tell people is don't assume or project things onto composers. Ask first what their rates are, what a timeline they think would be appropriate. Just ask everything. Communication, again, it comes back to communication and understanding that like they also, if they're newer, say they're a younger composer that maybe hasn't had many commissions, if they suggest a certain timeline, give them more. Because a lot of young composers that I've worked with, when they've been asked about a timeline, they'll be like, "Oh, a month is fine." A month is not fine. You need more, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, okay. Well, what if we gave you 3 months, and give them even more time?" Or if they lowball an estimate of something for, say, they're writing a piece for like a wind quintet or something, and you want it to be like 10 minutes, and they're just like, "Oh, $10, go 100." Like, help them out in that way, especially if they're younger, but always ask first and figure out how you can establish the relationship that way, so that they can feel comfortable with that communication, because so many are really uncomfortable when it comes to the business side of composing. And I think that's a huge deficiency in the education of composers and how to handle that side of life. So that's one of the biggest things. And yeah, I think that's actually the biggest I guess advice that I give.
For sure, that's good advice. From like the actual compositional standpoint, when you're working with a performer, is there anything that performers do that like really gets on your nerves, like something that can be really difficult for composers to work with?
Yes. Not opening the floor for a dialogue about what's happening. It could be even before the process starts. Recently, in recent times rather, I've been involved in a commission where not all of the details were ironed out with me personally beforehand. There was a discussion, but then some things happened that I wasn't aware of. And so when an announcement came, I was a little bit blindsided because a lot of the details weren't explicitly discussed beforehand, but I had already signed on to things. And it's this touchy situation where it's like, well, I signed for these specific things that we talked about and not these things. But then it's like, well, do I look like a dick now because I'm going to say no to this stuff? And so I think even from that beginning point, it's really important to just communicate. And then when you get to the rehearsal process of things, continually go back and give those moments to be like, what did you think about that? Like, honestly, you're not going to hurt our feelings. Like, if it's not what you think, then awesome. But I've seen it time and time again where it's just like run through and then they go and they're onto something else. And the composer's just like, wait. And they have their little score and with markings and stuff, and they don't get a chance to continually form that bond with performers.
Speaking of rehearsals, I have a question for you as a composer. I once experienced a piece I was playing for a young composer, and they wanted to be in the room for the first read through. Do you have a preference for whether you like to sort of be hands off when the people are reading through the piece at first, or do you like to be there from the very beginning?
Never, never. Every composer I work with, I'm just like, you don't want to be at that first rehearsal. You do not. No.
That was sort of my instinct too.
Yeah, well, because we like on both sides, it's like being a performer, I know that no matter how much we all prepare for any rehearsal, rarely is it going to be like chef's kiss great. And as the composer side, there's an overwhelming amount of like anxiety that comes with that first rehearsal because we spend forever imagining this piece in our minds. And then when you first hear it, it's always a letdown because you're like, oh, I suck as a composer. This doesn't sound how I wanted to. But really, it's just the first rehearsal, and it's like just wait a second. Of course, sometimes timelines don't allow that. Sometimes it's just like, girl, you gotta go. And so then I guess going to the first rehearsal is fine. But if at all possible, composers just don't grab a beer, go somewhere else, leave the place. Like, don't go to the rehearsal.
Yeah, give them time to wade through what they're playing. That's awesome.
So, Dr. Ellard, in these times of uncertainty, with lots of plans being canceled because of the pandemic, and I know this is like a really sad topic to talk about, like, I'm just curious about how have you like had to maybe like reinvent yourself and kind of adjust to this like new like crazy present that we're living in?
At first it was, of course, like for all of us, it was probably just a weekend where we suddenly saw our calendars immediately cleared out, and then many of us scrambling to wonder how to fund our lives with so much canceled. So I think collectively as humanity, we experienced like the stages of grief like all together, which is a strangely morbid, unifying kind of moment. But for me, it was, I had already had some soul stuff going. I already had intended to do my stuff with my album. I already had commissions that were in the pipeline. And so that helped kind of create some kind of ease, though I did lose 3 premieres that were supposed to be happening last month and like this month. They're scheduled for later and it's fine, but I had things ready to go that I could work on. But I think a big thing was, in a way, it also was a little bit of a wake-up call for how much I wasn't allowing myself to rest, and discovering how can I shift my priorities in a way during this time that maybe I wasn't allowed to before. I've spent more time with my family than I have in probably 10 years. I've gotten to practice things in a different way, especially being done with my degree and just figuring out how I want to practice stuff for myself. And also shifting my focus. I have more time to read. I have more time to invest in social justice issues. I have more time to just educate myself on things. And so I think that's a way that I've really shifted my energy. That's helped me avoid falling into the pit of despair.
Yeah, I think we were talking to when we did our first happy hour, we all kind of went through the same question you just went through, talking about how we're dealing with it. And I think it's kind of freeing after you realize that, hey, this isn't going to last forever, and you get past that kind of pit of despair moment, because you can take this time and refocus and, like you said, figure out how you want to practice and what you want to spend your energy on, and spending it on family or reading or educating yourself, doing those kind of things that, I mean, quite frankly, especially for you, just coming out of the doctorate, did not have time to do right before. So
yeah. And I think it's really important that I feel a responsibility to say is that I do come from a place of privilege. I'm a very pale white man. My family's supportive. I'm cisgender male. Like the odds are like super stacked up for me in my favor. So I am incredibly privileged that I'm able to spend time with my family and I'm able to do these things. And I have enough income through my students that I'm not panicking as much, wondering like when my next meal is going to happen. And so I think having that perspective, I think for a lot of people, especially with this kind of greater awakening to white supremacy in the country, I think that has helped people prioritize a lot of things in a different way. It's been really great to see people who years ago were just like Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, and then now they're like out protesting and they're marching and they're donating and they're doing things. And so I think in some kind of way, because there is this worldwide experience that's happening, it's given a greater perspective for a lot of people that can then show us, I guess, what is most important when we really kind of boil things down. And oftentimes, the clarinet isn't the most important thing ever.
what do you mean the clarinet's always the most important thing, Luke? No,
I would agree with that too.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Did we have a live question? I think?
Yeah, we do. Jesse, hi Jesse. Jesse McConnell says, great point on composers or musicians as well, knowing the business side of music. Are there any resources or music business concepts you use to be successful?
Yes. There's tons of resources. You can literally just Google stuff on YouTube now. There's a lot of stuff. But if you want books, they're like, I'm moving right now, so I like have a giant stack over there. But Breaking Into the Scene is a great book. The Savvy Music Teacher, The Savvy Musician. There's so many books like that and resources. If you are on a college campus, it's worth kind of seeing maybe if you have something. But now there's a lot of resources online. A lot maybe YouTube videos that TED Talks, tons of stuff like that that can help us navigate that. I think the conversation has really boomed a lot in the last couple of years with the giant shift in how we move through the classical world. So I know this is like a really lame answer, but Google is your friend. It really is. We're so grateful that I can answer that way, because before it was just like, business, you need to be principal of New York Phil. Like that was like the business advice, which is not advice at all. But those couple books that I mentioned can be really helpful. Also, ensembles like Fifth House Ensemble are great. C21 Musician, New Music USA has some stuff. What else? There's so many. Wholehearted Musician is great. There's a bunch.
Yay, Dana. Wholehearted Musician.
Amazing.
I'm in one of her classes now. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Woo!
Woo!
That's great. So sort of switching sides of the conversation here. Do you have a piece of music that you are most proud to have composed right now? And can you share why that piece is so memorable?
Yes. This is kind of a lame answer, but honestly, I'm really super proud of my single that came out earlier this month. It's because it is like such a shift has happened in my life over the past couple of years that it was almost like the culmination of all of these things, philosophy, even how I view myself and my own self-worth, and just all of these things. This whole project has been really freeing for me. That's the most apt word I could use. Is it's been really freeing. So I would say that is like a piece that I'm super proud of. But aside from that, another piece that I'm really proud of that has been premiered already is my percussion duo Speakover. that was premiered last year by Spectrum Ensemble, which is a percussion duo that focus on LGBTQ plus composers and stories and initiatives. And it was inspired by even like my own ways, but inspired by how we often in marginalized communities, but just in general, can speak over someone, even if we're on the same side. And so I leave it up for interpretation, but that was the inspiration behind it. And it was composed as part of a benefit for the Coalition for Aging LGBT in Texas, that organization that provide housing and resources for elderly LGBT people. And so that's something that I'm really proud to be a part of. And Spectrum Ensemble is incredible. They do amazing stuff, and they are just wonderful musicians and people. So I really recommend everyone check them out. And yeah, I was really proud to work with them.
Awesome. Can you give us just a little more insight into how you compose, like how you go about it, like day one, you got your commission, how you start? So maybe some of the nuts and bolts, or like what methods work best for you, how your creative process works.
Sure. First, I start with a tone row, and then no, I'm just kidding. LOL. It really varies. I often build my music from chords or sequences of chords, and even more so often, or maybe like a general chord progression or a schema. And I do not shy away from using the same one in pieces. I love hiding hidden details like that in pieces where, say, there's a chord progression and sorry, I have to run, that may or may not be in other pieces that I've done before, but I hid it in a way or restructured it in a way that it's not as noticeable, but I love doing that in a way because it's kind of like my own little signature, my own little like secret note in pieces. So that's one of the things that I love to do. I don't spend as much time thinking about like the specifics of process as much as I do asking the question, like, am I communicating well? Am I communicating my piece well? And through that, practice and craft can help make things clearer. And so whatever I do, I want to find a way that I can, whether it's through melody or motives or something like that, or texture, how can I give kind of a trail of breadcrumbs for the performers and the listeners to make sense of what I'm writing? Because I just want to talk to people. I just want to like hang with people. And so for music, I just want to make sure that like it's a good hang, and through that is communicating well. And so that's what I think about.
Absolutely. When you write for a reed quintet, which is, well, in my opinion, a very awesome ensemble, but do you have a specific way of writing for reed quintet, or advice to composers that would like to write for the reed quintet, especially since it's a semi-new configuration of instruments?
My biggest advice is kind of my overarching composition advice is show what you do to other people and ask questions. So say it's someone who wants to write a reed quintet in the future, maybe even before, write little solos for their friends. Because everyone has a clarinetist friend. Literally everyone has a clarinetist friend, so boom, well that's done. They'd probably be a bass clarinet too, easy, 2 out. And then saxophonists are everywhere, cool, done. But finding ways that you can continue forming relationships with performers and asking them questions, even if it's, I still do this all the time. Whenever I write something new, I'll send it to friends who aren't related to the project I'm working on and be like, is this possible, or am I just dumb? And I think that's a really valuable thing to make a part of our practice. And I think that directly translates into writing for reed quintet, which I think one of the huge bonuses of writing for reed quintet is that it all has reeds. Writing for wind quintet is so annoying because you're just like, okay, well, the horn's going to drown everything out and the flutist is just trying their best, bless them. And then, but for reed quintet, it's generally like finding the sound world isn't as, not saying that there's not a depth there, but you're not struggling with these like disparate instrument groups and trying to somehow find a common ground. And so I think that's something that you can lean into in a way. That's what I wanted to do in my piece I wrote for you guys, was how can I make things blend, and then how can I take things apart? as if I'm like cooking a gumbo and then I'm gonna like take a spoon and like spoon up like the andouille sausage or something. Like I don't know. That's just kind of an image I have, and so I think requintet is really special in that way that you can create a homogenous group, but then kind of highlight different things.
Definitely, absolutely.
Cool. Before we go on, I just wanted to kind of ask, do you have any advice for like really young composers just starting out, like someone in high school who's really interested in composition, since you've had that experience already?
Yeah. Just talk to your friends about it. Talk to those around. Write something for yourself. If you play an instrument, write something for yourself, or you sing. Be your first performer. That's what I did. I have in the old like Essential Elements beginner books, they would have the little exercises where it would be a blank staff and they would be like, okay, renotate this with the bar lines. And I said, no way, I'm gonna write whatever I want. And I would write little melodies in there and I would play them and I'd show them to my mom or I'd play them for my friends sitting next to me. And that's really the easiest way is write for yourself and then in turn start writing for your friends, even if it's just a line of music, like a tiny little line. I've taught composition before to even middle schoolers, and if you are a music, say like as a student with a music, they have a like a private teacher or a music teacher, ask if they'll look at it. Ask maybe your band director or someone can look at it with you. Hopefully they're not a jerk and they'll like be really supportive of it. My band director let me use Finale on his computer and I got to notate some stuff for the first time through that. So really just telling people about it. That's like the biggest thing. And then opening yourself up to writing for yourself and having other people look at what you do.
What about like further on, like advice for someone who's interested in both performance and composition like you were? Should they go for something, like would you advise going for something like a dual degree, or would you advise for picking one? You know, I think, did you do a dual degree in your undergrad?
No, we didn't have a composition degree. We had like kind of a minor, but that was it. But I took composition lessons and I wrote pieces and stuff. For me, it was different. For my composition masters, at the time I was like, I'm done with clarinet. I'm not going to perform again. I'm just going to be a composer because that's again, I was like, I guess that's what I have to do. I have to sacrifice one or the other. And so because I did my undergrad in performance, I was like, well, I'm going to do my grad degrees in composition and see what happens. And then, of course, for me, because I'm really not good just doing like one sole straight and narrow thing, I like everything in me was like, I want to do both and figure out a way to make it work. If you are, it really depends on if it's within your means to do some kind of a dual degree program, then that could be beneficial. But even if you're at a school that, say, you are primarily a performer, that's mostly what you've done, ask the composition department if any of the grad students will give you lessons. Of course, they're going to want to teach you because they want that experience as well. And also, I'm pretty sure they'll probably want to just share composition with you. So you don't have to necessarily do a degree. It's definitely easier going from performer to composer, I think, because when you're studying performance, you have to really keep it up. But I know when I studied composition, I took lessons a little bit, but I was like not diligent. I just performed a lot all the time. But a lot of the things that you work on, like technique, just kind of didn't get so great because I wasn't studying that. So I think if you're primarily a performer, just ask. Again, it just goes back to just all you can do is just ask. Send an email. If you know some composers, even friends that are, within your year, be like, hey, would you give me a composition lesson? Like, of course they're going to say yes. So that's kind of the way. And if you really, 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 really feel like I want to slap a piece of paper that says I'm a composer, and it's within your means and you're not going to, be in debt for 100 years, then okay, go for it. But there are other options besides getting a degree. You don't have to have a degree in composition to be a composer, period. You also don't have to have a degree in performance to be a performer as well.
Absolutely. Jeff Dybel says hi, so I wanted to relay that to you. And one last question. I wanted to ask about any outside of school programs that you did that weren't part of your actual degree programs, like during the summer or during the year that that you felt were really beneficial to performers or composers?
So just like festivals or earlier in high school, or what kind of?
Could be both.
Could be both. For me, I started taking lessons in high school, and my teacher was really, really influential to me. I think it was, she came at a really crucial time when I was young. I had terrible self-esteem. I thought it was like really dumb. I thought I didn't think anything was really good about me. And then a change happened about halfway through high school, and it was at the same time I started taking lessons with her. And it was the first time that I felt like, oh, I can do this. And maybe maybe I do have like maybe some hope doing music, because I really wanted to, but I just really doubted it. And so I think taking lessons was one of the most influential things. And if you can find a good teacher that is really supportive and meets you where you're at, but also wants to take you forward, I think that's like the most important thing. As far as like when I got older, definitely I've done quite a few summer festivals, and I think really the ones that have kind of yielded the most like change internally, one was Ape Leopard's Creative Lab, which isn't happening anymore, I believe, or it's on hiatus rather. But even I did Freshing Festival last year with Fifth House Ensemble, and that was really great to work with them. So it really, I think, find out what is something that makes you really excited about music, and then if you can't do that during the school year for a number of reasons, maybe there's a way in the summertime that you can do that, even if it's maybe interning with a local organization. Again, it just takes reaching out in that case. But those are just some things. I think it really takes some self-reflection before even those decisions on like things outside. But I hope that answered your question.
Definitely. I think that's really good advice, and people of all different backgrounds who are listening can use that information to help their career too. So thank you.
Could you share some of your favorite musical experiences or memories that you have?
Ooh, yes. Well, one was having my reed quintet premiered at Carnegie Hall. That was pretty cool. That was an awesome experience.
Yay.
It really was. It really was. And I got to have my
Yeah.
I think that was really special, was that my parents hadn't heard A Piece of Mine live since my master's recital in 2013. So it had been quite a while since they heard my music live. And I think it had been a while since my dad heard anything that I wrote. So I think it was really special to have them there. And then I got to show them New York, and like they did so well. Like rode the subway and like walked around. Like they did such a great job. So I was really proud of them. But I think that was a really special experience. Going to Cortona sessions in Italy was a really special experience.
Yay.
Right?
Except I went the year after you, right?
Yeah, you went the year after
Yeah.
me.
I'm going this summer too. The virtual Cortona
one?
sessions.
Aw.
Yeah.
That was a really awesome time. If Catherine Vetter is watching this, hi, you're my soulmate and I love you. We met at that festival, and so meeting one of my favorite people in the world was really special. But
yeah. Hi, Catherine. I know her too.
I love her so much. Those are two that come to mind, but there really are so many. Having my bassoon concerto premiered a couple years ago for the North Texas Wind Symphony, that was really special because it was like I played in that group for 3 years, and so having all of my friends premiere this piece, and it was written for the group and for a friend, like one of my friends who's a bassoonist, that was just really a special moment for me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Luke, for answering all of our main questions here. We're about to get a little goofy and a little fun. So for people who might be new listeners, thank you, first of all, for listening. We're about to go to our lightning round. So we're going to set it up. Lara's going to pull up a timer and we're going to get started. And it's just quick, fast, and fun, okay? All right, Lara, whenever you're ready, we'll hit that.
Oh my gosh.
Do you need me to do the final sound still?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just count it down when you're
Ready?
ready. Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, Luke, favorite childhood cartoon.
SpongeBob.
Least favorite unaccompanied clarinet piece.
Oh my God. Oh, so many. Pseudomeister.
Yes. In your opinion, what is the worst movie of all time?
Oh, Avatar, the live version.
Favorite chamber group to listen to.
Why music?
Awesome. Favorite taco place.
Ooh, Torchies, maybe? No, fine, Torchies.
Well, I love Torchies.
Me too.
Least favorite clarinet excerpt.
Beethoven 6, all.
Yes, the second movie.
Definitely.
What was your first car?
Oh, Burgundy Altima.
Nice. Favorite comfort food.
Ooh, Pad Thai.
Nice. And most memorable performance experience. Oh, that's it. But you can answer that one.
Most memorable performance experience. My New Atmospheres concert last fall, our debut concert.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, that is it. Thank you so much, Luke, for joining us. And just want to give a shout out again for his website, lukeellard.com. You can check out all of his music. And I believe you have some links to some of your SoundCloud things on there as well, right?
I'm very internet, so you'll find everything there.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, and for anyone still interested, yes, you can submit your reed quintet miniature. We would love to perform it. Please do. Thanks again, Luke, for being on. Thanks so much. And
Thank you.
We'll see you later.
Thanks, Luke.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.